Nice to see you.
We're on.
Good morning, everyone. This is the June. Sorry, thank you. This the June 1st, 2022 regular meeting of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners is hereby called to order. Since this board last met, there have been two tragic mass shootings in the United States. I ask that we consider those communities as we have a few moments of silence this morning. Now, if you will, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda today is the adoption of the agenda. I will note that Lieutenant Evan Zadd is not present this morning. So a motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to recognitions. And this morning we have the annual introduction of our lifeguards.
Good morning, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, Town Nags Head. It's my pleasure. It's my 18th year being up here and being able to introduce our lifeguard staff for the summer. So without further ado, I think the new tradition we've started is instead of bringing them all in here this morning, we've got a little video introduction that Roberta and Benny put together. So I appreciate it. And thanks again to the town for your continued support.
Hi, my name's Hunter Cox. I'm from Virginia Beach. This is my 5th year at Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
I'm Austin Fallon. I'm from Centerville, Virginia, and this is my 4th year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Coleman Flynn. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. This is my 6th year.
Hi, I'm Patrick O'Keefe from Richmond, Virginia, and this is my 9th year of Ocean Rescue.
Hey, I'm Michael Dew. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and this is my 3rd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm Jess Ball. I'm from Ashburn, Virginia, and this is my 4th summer with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm Noah Parsons. I'm from Kittleville Hills. This is my 6th year doing Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm Penelope Hawkins. I'm from Montreal. This is my 3rd year working for Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm John Kenny. Nags Head Ocean Rescue. I've been guarding the beaches for many, many years.
Hi, I'm Alice. I'm from Montreal. This is my 4th year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm Brooke Cox. This is my 3rd summer with Nags Head Ocean Rescue. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia.
This is our supervisor crew for 2022. My name is Captain Chad Moats, Nags Head Ocean Rescue. This is my 22nd season. And now let's introduce the rest of our lifeguard staff.
My name is Carson Richards. I'm from Northern Virginia. This is my 1st year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Dylan Keir. I'm from Naples, Florida, and this is my 1st summer with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Carson Caldo. I'm from Virginia Beach, and this is my 1st year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Luke Amon. I'm from Highland, Michigan, and this is my 1st year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
What's going on? My name is Nikhil Patel. I'm an All-American rookie, and I'm from DC.
I'm Mandy Teedy. I'm from Southern Shores, and this is my 5th year here.
Hi, my name is Megan Buchanan. I'm from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and this is my 2nd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Océane Lajeunesse. I'm from Montreal, and this is my 1st year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Jackson Berry. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and this is my 2nd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Anton Cowan. It's my 1st year at Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I'm from Montreal.
Hello, my name is Will Garman. I'm from Nags Head, North Carolina, and this is my 3rd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Lily Stramsky. I'm from Houston, Texas, and this is my 2nd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, I'm Jacob Smith. This is my 2nd year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia.
Hi, my name is Jacob Gilbo. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and this is my 2nd year with the Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Jean. I'm from Cape Charles, Virginia, and this is my 3rd year.
My name is Mike, also known as Fed or Fetty.
I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and this is my second year.
My name's Nick. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, and this is my first season with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hey, I'm Ryer. I'm from Arizona, and this is my rookie year with Nags Head.
My name is Victoria. I'm from Northern Virginia, and this is my second year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Leo. I'm from Quebec City, Canada, and this is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Simon. I'm from Montreal, and this is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Lawrence. I'm from Montreal, and this is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Hi, my name is Nadia. I'm from Quebec, Canada, and this is my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
My name is Catherine. It's my first year with Nags Head Ocean Rescue, and I'm from Montreal.
I'm Randy Wells, Fire Chief. Thanks to support from Nags Head's Board of Commissioners, our beach is guarded by one of the best ocean rescue teams in the southeastern United States. Experts in beach and ocean safety, our lifeguards are eager to share their knowledge. So feel free to ask them about the day's conditions before hitting the water. Also, be sure everyone in your group knows what rip currents are and how to escape them before heading out to the beach. As we say here in Dare County, love the beach, respect the ocean.
We are Nags Head Ocean Rescue.
Very nice. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Chief. Looks like a really great crew this year.
Yeah, we had a great opening weekend, and yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a busy summer, so appreciate everybody's assistance and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks. Next item on our agenda is a recognition for 25 years of service.
All right, very good. Good morning, everybody. This, the Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021, regular session of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners is
Go back in time.
Time travelers, just like John Kennedy.
Chuck. That's a shame everybody chuckles when they see John.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Nancy. Welcome.
Thank you, Red. It's an honor being with the board and citizens, visitors, and employees to recognize Robin Taylor for 25 years of experience with the town of Nags Head. Robin started with the town May 19th, 1997 as the town custodian. She resides in Kill Level Hills where she owns her own home, and she has been named Employee of the Year twice during her tenure with the town. She loves animals, decorating, and feels very blessed to work with the town. She also loves her Nags Head family. Robin maintains town hall, the fitness room, and the boardroom. She keeps all of those facilities in tip-top shape for our visitors and citizens and employees. We've received many compliments on our facilities, and she is a big part of that. As the custodian, she is the first one to work and make sure that our day starts fresh and clean. I think I can speak for all when I say job well done, and thank you, Robin.
And as is our custom for employees with 25 or more years, we're going to come around for a picture with Robin and a presentation. A small gift for you. We also have a certificate of appreciation. This is presented this morning to Robin Taylor on the occasion of her 24th anniversary. May 19th, 1997, you began employment with the town of Nags Head. You're hereby honored and recognized for 25 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the town. With your forbidding devotion, duties as custodian of the Public Services Department, your faithful service has had a valuable effect on the well-being of the town. You deserve this recognition. The town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners express their sincere admiration and appreciation for
do in the past extend his best wishes for continued success and many more productive years to obtain. By order of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners, this the first day of June 2000.
Is this a belt card?
I don't think so. Robin reminds us once again how fortunate the town of Nags Head is to have dedicated employees who appreciate working here and who stay with us for long careers, and we appreciate everything she does. Thank you. That brings us to public comment, and I'll turn this over to John Leidy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every month, the Board of Commissioners welcomes members of the public to provide public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to express concerns or discuss other matters of interest. This is not an opportunity for dialogue. The Board of Commissioners rarely responds to public comment, and we ask that any comments be presented to the board as a whole. If you're here to speak on any of the matters that are scheduled for a public hearing, you can reserve your comments until that public hearing. But for anyone who wishes to comment on anything else, this would be the opportunity. And if you would please start by going to the podium, tell us your name and where you live, and then address your remarks to the Board of Commissioners. And I will be keeping the time, and we'll let you know when your 5 minutes is just about up. So, is anybody here for public comment? Anyone at all? Well, if there are no takers, then we will conclude the public comment session and for at least this portion until we get to the public hearings.
Thank you, John. That moves us then to the consent agenda, which you have before you, includes 4 items, and a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That brings us then to public hearings, and the first one being on the proposed operating budget for the coming fiscal year. And I will turn this back over to John Leidy and Amy Miller.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So at this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider the proposed annual budget for the town. We'll begin by the presentation of the introduction presented by this town's finance officer, Amy Miller.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Before you, we have several agenda items for your consideration for adoption. Within the packet, it contains a summary of the changes. We've had several workshops, and with the board guidance, we have in front of you the proposed budget ordinance for fiscal year 22-23, and it outlines the changes between the manager's recommended budget and the adopted budget. And I think it's outlined in the memo portion of the documentation. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions or if you would like me to go through the items one by one. I had talked to John before the meeting started, and I think the consensus was that we would ask for board adoption of each of these items individually rather than as presented.
All right. Thank you. Board members, any sense of how you would like for staff to proceed this morning? Do we need to go through these items individually? Would you like to hear about just the changes, perhaps? If you would then, Amy, please review the changes that have been made from the recommended budget.
Sure, Michelle, it's the memo. So if you go down to the second page, Michelle. Yes. So after we had held our last workshop, one of the directives of the board was that they had asked for the cost of living adjustment to be changed from 6% to 7%, and the 401k contribution from the town with no required match from the employee. The town manager had proposed a 5% 401k contribution for everyone. That was then 4% for all non-law enforcement officers. And of course, by state statute, the town automatically contributes 5% for all sworn law enforcement officers. So that's one change. Another change is that the lifeguard pay scale, that will be a separate motion as part of the adoption of the new pay scale. But the town manager proposed a minimum of $15.50, and that was changed to $16. So that would be a $1 raise for all the lifeguards. Part of the proposed budget is the security retrofits on the town hall second floor, and part of that is the design and with some other furniture additions, we realized that that's part of an enhancement that we would probably want to look at. So we did add $15,000 for some furniture in the lobby of town hall in conjunction as we redesigned the lobby. And I appreciated the board guidance because traveling this weekend, I did notice how high gas and diesel were. So we did change the gas and diesel estimates for the budget for $5 a gallon for diesel and $4 a gallon for regular unleaded gas. And those three items really are what make up the major changes or impact fund balance. And we have also on the revenue side, we have increased our projections for occupancy and land transfer tax. We did reduce the fund balance appropriation. I think it was $3.3 million, and now it's $3.275 million. There are some other changes that really don't impact fund balance, but they do have to do with the contributions, the grants that we're rebudgeting for the emergency operations grant. So that's $75,000, but it's a $75,000 offset for a grant. So we rebudgeted some of these grants that really don't have an impact to the fund balance. And of course, that would be some transfers between the capital investment fund for some changes that we've had, and we've received some actual quotes for the dump trucks, and we have done letters of intent to try to lock on those prices. So those prices also did increase for the dump trucks. And again, that would have an impact on the capital investment fund balance rather than the general fund balance. So some of those other items just have to do with the interfund transfers and grants revenue. But if you have any questions about that, then I'm happy to talk about that in more detail. I don't want to make it too confusing, but those essentially are the main changes to the budget.
Okay. Board members, any comments or questions? Mr. Sears? Mr. Coon? Okay. I see none. John, do we wish to invite the public at this point?
Yes. Anybody from the public who wishes to comment on the proposed budget may come and do so at this time.
My name is Bob Muller. I live in Nags Head. I want to compliment the board, particularly staff, on the presentation of the budget. The budget document, while dense, is fairly easy to access what's going on in it. I want to compliment the board for using a 99.75% collection rate in ad valorem taxes. That is astonishing. It means that everybody is paying their fair share, and 100% collection rate in the service districts for beach nourishment, which again indicates that everybody is paying their fair share. Those numbers are remarkable by any standard, and the town is to be complimented for its work in collecting taxes. I also want to compliment you on your wisdom to take funds that have accumulated in undesignated fund balance over the years through careful budgeting, through surplus revenues accumulated by our incredible tourism economy, and by the careful management of the budget by your staff, and rather than just letting them sit in a designated fund balance, shifting them to be used to benefit the citizens of the town through important projects in terms of maintaining and developing new capital infrastructure. So thank you for what I think is a remarkable budget, and one that shows wisdom and both a long-range visit for the town as well as a short-range excellent management. And I would be remiss if I did not thank you for adopting the recommendations of the decentralized wastewater management plan, both in terms of buying the water quality monitoring equipment that was recommended, having that installed, and in adopting the increases in the incentive programs that were recommended that we hope will increase participation in what we all view as an extremely important program. Thank you for an excellent budget, excellent presentation, and thank you for all that you do for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Muller. Are there any other comments on the proposed budget? Any at all? Does the board wish to receive any other information regarding the proposed budget or the associated items before you take action, at least on the budget? All right, if not, we will conclude the public hearing on the presented budget and the board may deliberate.
Before the board begins, I do want to thank former Mayor Muller for his comments, and I apologize for my failure to recognize your presence at the beginning of the meeting today. Staff, I think, has done a good job with this budget. I appreciate the creativity of creating this investment fund so that we can do these projects for the town in the future, all these capital improvements, maintenance, repaving roads, installing water lines, building facilities for the community, and to be able to do that with some stability in the tax rate, I think is going to be a real blessing for the town going forward, and will benefit many boards beyond this one. So with that, I'll ask if board members have any comments or questions before we proceed to begin to take votes.
Just one, former Mayor Muller pointed it out, but as of yesterday, our tax collection rate was 99.983%. Linda Bittner has done a great job, and I couldn't more highly.
One outstanding bill.
That's what it's got to be.
I would commend her highly. That's an outstanding rate.
It is. It's really wonderful. Mr. Sears?
I just echo what both of you said.
Thank you. Mr. Brinkley?
Thanks to Andy, Amy, and staff for the preparation of the budget. Very happy and pleased with this budget. We have projects, we're taking care of the employees, maintaining our tax rate, and I think we're doing some good things. So thank you to everybody that helped.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders?
No, just echo everything they said too, and thank them for a really great presentation and for, presenting it very well. Made it easy for me to understand being the new kid on the block. So appreciate it, guys.
Yes. All right. Thank you. So then I believe if we wish to proceed, then the first item would be adoption of the budget ordinance.
Move to adopt as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the budget ordinance as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The next item then would be I believe the general water fund. Do we need to take any action on that one? Schedule?
Move to adopt as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the water fund CIP schedule as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That was aye for me, sorry. We need to adopt, I believe, the revised consolidated fee schedule.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, then a motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The next item would be the fund balance policy.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the fund balance policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Mayor, I have a
question.
Yes.
Do we need to adopt both the investment fund policy and the investment fund ordinance? Both of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then we have the investment fund policy next.
Make a motion we approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the capital investment fund policy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And then we have next the capital investment fund ordinance.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the capital investment fund ordinance as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next item is the debt policy.
Motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the debt management policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the pay plan and allocation list.
Is there a second? I have a motion and a second to approve the pay plan allocation list. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a motion to approve the septic health initiative program policy.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the septic health initiative policy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to the cell phone policy.
Make a motion to accept if presented. Need to look at it.
Yeah, we need to, there needs to be some discussion on this
Okay.
one. So there not being a second, then I will ask Commissioner Brinkley, I know that you had some questions about this policy.
Mine, as I stated to the manager yesterday, item F, the department head is responsible for annual review of employee business-related cell phone use to determine if existing cell phone allowance should be continued as is, changed, or discontinued. I find it highly unlikely that the department heads are going to sit down and review each and every cell phone bill annually for their employees, especially in departments that have a large number of employees, such as the police department. I'm not saying there couldn't be some sort of review, but my question is, how is that feasible? Or is there some better way to word that?
You brought this up to me yesterday, and we've looked at this and talked with staff. And I think that there's a way to internally review this. It primarily would happen when we're reviewing job descriptions and updating job descriptions to trying to determine if these jobs, the job function requires the use of a cell phone. And so rather than looking at their annual use, we would just look at the job itself and if it requires it or not. So I don't really think that F is necessary in this policy. So what I would recommend is striking F and then making G F, if we could do that.
And I'm for the policy. It was just that one item that caused me some concern, and I'd be okay with that, striking that.
Commissioners? Bob, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. You want to present that motion then to adopt with an amendment?
Yes. Present it to adopt with the amendment.
Second.
Okay. And that amendment is to strike item F and make item G item F. Any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. Then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And then we have several position descriptions. The first of those being the sanitation equipment operator.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the job description for sanitation equipment operator as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next is sanitation equipment or trainee.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the job description as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next is sanitation equipment or crew leader.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the job description as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And the last is a position description for event planner.
Approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the job description as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much. That brings us next to yes, ma'am.
Mayor, before we start on the next item, on the advice of the attorney, I would ask to be recused since I also have business interest in a cottage court.
Okay, all right.
I would ask that a motion be made to excuse Commissioner Cahoon from participating in this.
Okay.
Make a motion that we excuse Commissioner Cahoon from this item.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right.
So with that, Mayor, you want me to go ahead and open the public hearing to consider this proposed text amendment?
Yes.
All right, so at this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider a text amendment submitted by George E. Goodrich to modify the maximum allowable gross floor area within each dwelling unit of a conforming cottage court and to increase allowable stories. And we'll begin with the presentation of the staff's analysis provided by the planning director, Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. There's a lot of information as part of the staff report, and I'm happy to delve into any of it. If I skip over something that you would like more information on, but it's sort of a quick rundown of the request. As the attorney noted, applicant Eddie Goodrich has submitted a text amendment request to the UDO. If it were to be adopted, it would amend the supplemental regulations for conforming cottage courts as it pertains to the maximum allowable gross floor area within each individual cottage, as well as the number of stories that each cottage could be. The current ordinance states that the maximum allowable gross floor area for the individual cottages is 1,500 square feet. It also states that the individual cottages cannot be any taller than 1.5 stories, and at least 1/3 of the cottage court units shall not exceed 1 story. The applicant has essentially proposed 2 revisions to this language, and I will scroll down to where we've outlined that as part of the staff report. But the first thing that it would do is sort of lay out a graduated scale for the height and the area of the individual cottages within the development. There's 3 criteria here. The first would state that 1/3 of the individual cottages shall be 1 floor and shall not exceed 1,400 square feet in gross floor area. It goes on to recommend that 1/3 of the cottages shall be 1.5 floors, not to exceed 1,700 square feet in gross floor area. And then 1/3 of the cottages shall be 2 floors, not to exceed 2,000 square feet of gross floor area. Based upon this proposed section 7.2.2.3, we're going to be proposing to increase the gross floor area from what it is now, which is 1,500, to a maximum of 2,000. And that's been outlined in this proposed revision in 7.2.2. I'll note that I had written this up sort of word for word, realizing now that it doesn't leave a lot of room for flexibility. With the word shall in there, it pretty much nails it down to having to be, one specific way. So I would say as we move forward with this, if there's inclination by this board to adopt these amendments, that perhaps we would want to go in and look at a revision to this language. up to 1/3 of the individual cottages may be one floor and not to exceed 14 and so forth, just so that no one is required to meet the one floor, the 1.5, and the 2, if they would prefer to not do that. Also, 7.2.3.2 does state, it just goes ahead and outlines that we are proposing to increase 1.5 stories to 2 stories in addition to the area requirements above. As part of the Nags Head land use plan, there was a committee established as we went through looking through our regulations and their existing plan and how to update that plan moving forward. And it was at that time that it was noted that there was a desire to improve or at least add a variety of the types of accommodations that we have within the town, especially transient uses, including hotels and cottage courts. Previously, back in 1985, cottage courts were eliminated from the zoning ordinance, making them non-conforming uses. Back in 2015, the conversation was revitalized. The cottage courts were indeed helpful and did offer a different type of accommodation that was desirable. So we added the cottage court use back into the zoning ordinance at that time. That was adopted in 2016. And unfortunately, that's the last attachment in your packet. I'll pull it up real quick, just so we have it. Okay, here we go. At that time, planning staff and the planning board went through a process of analyzing the existing cottage courts that were within the town, looking at their area, their size, their height, etc., noting that when we added this use back into the ordinance, we had a desire to have the new cottage courts emulate those that were existing. So that is what we drafted. That was the criteria that was proposed, and ultimately what was approved, which is on the screen now. And I will note at that time, the maximum allowable area within each cottage unit was 2,000 square feet. After that, we've had 2 cottage courts developed within the town, and may be familiar with them. I included some information about them in your packet. But the first one that came online in 2017 was Whalebone Cottages. That's down at 8201 South Old Oregon Inlet Road. And the largest cottage in that development is 1,503 square feet. Shortly after that, in 2018, we had Haven on the Banks. A lot of people call that Gant Cottages. That's located at 115 East Dove. And the largest structure in that development is 1,522 square feet. The applicant today was also the applicant for a cottage court approval back in 2018 for a cottage court called Outer Banks Hotel Cottages. That was to be located at 7222 South Virginia Dare Trail. It was approved in 2018. It was never constructed, and so that site plan expired in March of 2019. But at that time, that proposed cottage in that cottage court, the largest cottage was 1,917 square feet of gross floor area. So also at that time, 2,000 square feet was the allowable. So that was compliant and that was approved as is. What occurred after that was that as part of the UDO process, looking at the existing cottage courts, the older cottage courts, and the newer cottage courts, there was a belief that 2,000 square foot maximum was more in tune with that of a single family dwelling and not that of a small cottage, which was what was ultimately desired for that different type of accommodation. So at that time, the maximum gross floor area was reduced from 2,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet. We haven't had an application for a cottage court come in since the UDO was adopted back in October of 2019. However, recently, staff was approached by someone who wanted to have the Outer Banks Hotel cottage court sort of readopted. So reviving that plan from 2018. And when we looked at the approved 2018 plan in conjunction with what currently exists, the primary area that stood out was that the code had changed with regard to the gross floor area. And so we would be unable to approve or recommend approval of Outer Banks Cottages Hotel cottage court based upon today's standards, which is what has brought us here today, with the applicant seeking to make some revisions to the existing language that would both increase the gross floor area as well as the allowable stories within a cottage. From staff perspective, we did recommend denial of the proposal because we did feel like increasing from 1,500 to 2,000 was more in tune with a single family dwelling. We also felt like allowing cottages to be that large could also maybe be enticing for someone to try to circumvent our subdivision regulations through essentially, sort of condoing out those dwellings, what we would consider at 2,000 square feet to be more of a single family dwelling. Staff presented this to the planning board at their April meeting, and at that time, the planning board did vote unanimously to recommend denial of the proposed text amendment. And I'm happy to address any questions that you may have. Again, there's quite a bit of information in the packet that I didn't really hit on, but hopefully if there's any questions, I can address those. The applicant, Mr. Goodrich, is here as well, so we can try to address any questions you have.
All right, thank you very much, Kelly. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt?
I think I missed, is this lot coverage allowance the same for single family home as it is for the cottage court?
It is not. So single family dwelling, say in an R1, R2, R3 district, it's going to be 33% of the lot area. And so for a cottage court, which if you look at those regulations, they're allowed in the C2 district, so it's a commercial district. So their lot coverage is going to be capped at 55%.
Any further questions?
Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Goodrich, do you have anything you'd like to present on? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Eddie Goodrich, and thank you very much for allowing me to address the board tonight. The reason for my request is, if you look back, originally, the square footage was established at 2,000 square feet. That was in 1916. And, pardon me, 2016. And in 2019, the focus group decided that that was too large. And the 1,500 square feet was a better number. So obviously one size doesn't fit all. And this, you know, a 2,000 square foot house is basically a 4-bedroom house, which accommodates a husband and a wife, maybe a brother and a sister, and a couple of children. It's not a big house. All the examples that were used to establish the cottage court ordinance were built in 1950 and 1960. Nags Head was incorporated in 1961. So the examples that were used had no stormwater ordinances, no parking ordinances, no septic. I don't know what the health department was doing at that point in time. There was no federal flood insurance. 8-foot ceilings were the standard. Now they're 9 feet. And quite frankly, in 1950s and 60s, there was no such thing as a king size bed, unless you live in Hollywood. So in thinking about it, a developer builder, if he's given one number of 1,500 square feet, he's going to build every house the same, and all of them will be 1,499 square feet. That's just life. He's going to build the biggest house he can, and he's going to build the same house over and over if he can, because they know what it costs. So I came up with the idea by reading through some of the things that Kelly gave me. The town is looking for diversity, and the way to achieve diversity is have the houses be different sizes and different heights. So I came up with the idea of 1/3 of the units being 1,400 square feet, which is basically a 2 or 3 bedroom house, and 1,700 square feet, 1.5 floors. That's basically a 3 or 4 bedroom house. And a 2,000 square foot house is still about a 4 bedroom house. So it's by far not a large house. The examples that were used, even though they were built in 1950 and 1960, if you look at them, they range anywhere from 500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. So back in 1950 and 1960, it wasn't uncommon for some of the cottages in a cottage court to be 5,000 square feet, which I think is way too large. So the examples do embrace the spirit of a cottage court. However, I don't see having one number as accomplishing diversity in architecture. And that's why I'm requesting that 1/3 of the units be small, 1 story, 1,400 square feet, 1/3 of the units be 1.5 story, 1,700 square feet, and 1/3 of the units be 2,000 square feet. And of course, all will be slightly less than those numbers. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Goodrich?
Thank you. Any questions, Bob?
No, not this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Goodrich. All right, would any member of the public care to comment on this proposed text amendment?
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank the mayor, commissioners, planning department, building inspectors for helping me on a text amendment, make a project work beautifully. Thank you so very much for your help last year. I'm excited about cottage courts coming back to Nags Head. I love Nags Head. That's why I moved back here. I'm a builder, and I don't like seeing the huge 8,000 square foot, 12 bedroom houses built that were built just north of this project that Eddie and John are talking about. So I just asked for the commissioners and Mr. Mayor to have considerations on this text amendment. John, the builder and owner of this project, we've done townhouses in the same area together. I can honestly say he has quality and integrity in everything he does. Unlike me, he doesn't sell. He hangs on to stuff and he uses it. So this is a project that he wants to build and hang on to, hopefully to help us North Carolina people from Greenville, Edenton, Raleigh, to be able to come down here and stay in a smaller cottage and enjoy our Outer Banks. So anyway, just take that into consideration. I appreciate your time and appreciate all the help that you've given me.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else care to comment? Any other member of the public at all? Does the board wish to receive any other information regarding this proposed text amendment? Or have any other questions for staff or anyone?
What's your insight since you're on the committee?
All right, well, we'll start that in a second. I don't think from anyone.
All right, then we will conclude the public hearing and the board may begin its deliberations.
And I'll start because I did serve on that comp plan committee. And I frankly was one of those who argued for the lower limits, thinking that 2,000 square feet was too large for what anybody would look at and call a cottage court. Now that's an arbitrary, consideration of what looks like a cottage court and what doesn't look like a cottage court. But I also acknowledge that going from 2,000 to 1,500 could have been too much of a squeeze. Again, we were doing this, you're developing policy in a little bit of a vacuum when you're doing that. And so it's difficult to see what the actual consequences may be. I've also been the architect for a cottage court under the ordinance. And I do have some reservations again about what a cottage, again, what do I think a cottage court should look like in Nags Head in 2022. And I do have some concerns about the 1.5 story limit. At the same time, I'm concerned about the square footage. I do believe the variety of look within a cottage court could be balanced by allowing some percentage of 2-story structures. Frankly, with a 1.5 story, if you creatively use the dormers and under the ordinance, you can get pretty darn close to a two-story floor plan anyway. So what you're really just talking about is instead of sort of playing that game, is just letting that be a 2-story building, and then it increases the height by the roof structure. And the third thing that I have a concern about with the ordinance as it's presented is and Kelly addressed this, is the fix on the third, and the third. If I were looking at this, I would prefer that it be, not more than a third of the largest structure. And then with the smaller structures, you can do what you want to, in terms of achieving the mix, but not to arbitrarily set that standard at a third. So personally, my response to this would be one, I'd like to see the planning board have another pass at it with this input, but with input from the board. But what I would argue for is what I believe would contribute to the character and quality of those cottage courts would be to allow 2-story units, to limit 2-story units to not more than a third of the units, and then to consider for those larger units an increase not to 2,000 but to 1,750 from the 1,500, because I do think perhaps that the 1,500 was too hard to squeeze. That's my take on this from my extent of involvement, participation in the committee. So, Mr. Sears.
I think this is a basis for a change, like you mentioned. And I wanted to hear what happened in the committee because I didn't hear the footnotes from that. I like Mr. Goodrich's idea to change the architecture so that we don't have cottage courts that all just stand on a high height. And like Bob said, it's 55%. And a lot of folks are complaining that that 55% squeezes up to 5 foot off of a property line, which makes it really tight. So changing those roof lines could change that appearance. I would agree with the town or the staff in saying that, right now in KDH, there's 1,974 square foot houses, 4 bedrooms that are, that's a single family home and they're selling for $715,000 each. So if we're going to put a 2,000 square foot in there on a cottage court, what are we, that's not really an old school cottage that they're thinking about. I think there's some room there to play. And I agree that the planning board, I don't want to come in and approve something the planning board shot down. So I think that needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Mr. Brinkley.
I appreciate hearing your comments on the on that meeting from the focus group, and I agree that some diversity is needed instead of just a carbon cookie cutter type thing. I don't have any issues with going to 2-story. What is, like you said, what is the definition of a cottage court in 2022? 2,000 square feet, 1,750. I don't know, but having the planning board have another shot at it to see. I'm open to obviously doing something different than what we've got right now.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like we're all on the same page. Mr. Goodrich made some great points. I love his idea, and I think, it's definitely more aesthetically pleasing to have the different sizes, and I'm not opposed to 2 stories either. I think his points are very well taken. Sizes are the things that I'm a little concerned with too. Like he said, all these cottage courts were built a long time ago, and that's kind of why they're all small. And things have changed, but I would not be opposed to having the planning department look at this again and definitely come up with some good numbers and something that we can review.
All right, thank you. Can I ask Ms. Wyatt to come back to the podium? Can you fill us in a little bit on the planning board discussion on this? Because were there particular parts of this that were objectionable?
My recollection was that the primary concern from the planning board was the 2,000. And it was the same concern expressed that, many of us full-time residents have rent or own single family dwellings that are not 2,000 square feet and live comfortably. So the 2,000 square feet was the primary concern noted by the planning board.
Right. Okay. And I think, yes, those old examples were small structures, but I think what we're looking for in terms of, diversity of accommodation, and all the diversity doesn't have to be within the cottage court necessarily. We have hotel rooms, we have suites, we have full houses. So what we're trying to do is put something in between with the cottage court where you have that range of options that are more than a hotel, more than a suite, perhaps a little more than some of those older cottages, but that don't get up to essentially back up to house size. And that also is from the discussion that we had back during the comp plan, trying to fit something that's kind of in the middle. So what I'm hearing the board say is that we would like to see this, we would like to see a revised version of this. John, what do we need to do with this? Do we need to?
I suggest you table this with instructions to send this send the consideration of this back to the planning board with some specific guidance on what y'all want them to consider. And one of those things, I think for clarity, it would be helpful if the planning board knew whether the Board of Commissioners wanted them to consider requiring diversity within an individual cottage court or simply allowing for some diversity within the cottage court. Because I think we've had a discussion about both of those concepts. And I think that would be helpful, because I don't know if the planning board discussed that aspect of this, but I think that's been important to the board in its discussion about the idea of opening up some diversity. So I think it would be helpful if the planning board had some guidance on whether y'all wanted to consider that within individual courts or just allowing for some variation from cottage court to cottage court.
Any thoughts about that response? Commissioner Sears?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I want to see it work out, that they can do what they want to do, that it's been on the planning for a long, long time, and it was approved once, so I do want to see it work out.
Right. So, I mean, there is, and I'll ask, was there any discussion about the mix and whether a mix is required, whether if you want to build all one story, that should be permitted?
There really wasn't. They were comfortable with the, 1/3 not to exceed, or 1/3 must be at least one story.
Right.
They felt like there was opportunities for diversity within the architecture as well, with those 75 design points. But I'm happy to bring this back to the planning board at their June meeting.
Right.
Along with the applicant.
Right. So,
Was there
yes.
Was there any discussion about with some of these older cottage courts, how much square footage? With the proposal, does the square footage of the homes increase a lot compared to the other cottage courts? I mean, like if you're building 2 stories.
Some of the older cottage courts are 1.5 and 2 stories, and I think those are maybe some of these larger ones you see here, that are maybe closer to the 15 and the 2. But we can certainly look at that. The other thought was to kind of do an analysis of some of the west side single-family dwellings and what are those average sizes coming in.
So I think what I'm hearing then in terms of a direction back to the planning board, and we'll incorporate this in a motion, is to maintain diversity within the cottage courts, to consider allowing some size increase beyond the current 1,500 square foot limit that's reasonable, and to permit some number of 2-story units within cottage courts. Does that sound like what the board is saying? Okay. Then a motion to table with that specific direction back to the planning board would be in order.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That's a very practical solution.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I'm going to suggest we need to get Commissioner Cahoon back. Let's take about a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
Recommendations from the Planning Board and the Planning and Development Director. Kelly?
Thank you. We'll go through, oops, wrong one. Okay. Go through this pretty quickly. As always, if you have any questions, just let me know. The planning board, they last met on May 19th, and during that meeting, they went through a sketch plan review for the construction of a 3-story mixed-use structure at 4413 South Croatan Highway. There were no significant concerns noted, so that's going to be going to technical review committee here soon, and then back to the planning board for their formal consideration at their June meeting. The planning board also got an update on phase 3 of the Resilient Coastal Communities program. And we're continuing the conversation on tree removal, tree preservation, how it's laid out in the UDO, maybe working on an appendix to have that more visible, and some other opportunities there. At their June 21st meeting, the planning board will have a sketch plan review for construction of a 4-story, 90-unit hotel. This is titled The Inn at Whalebone, and that's going to be down at 6633 West Pheasant Avenue, Lakeside Drive, around the Duck-Through gas station. They'll also, like I noted, go ahead and look at that mixed-use building again. And the applicant for the text amendment related to the remote control vehicles was unable to attend the planning board meeting. So we're going to put that back on for the planning board's June meeting as well. Board of Adjustment, they didn't meet in May, but they are going to be meeting in June. We have a variance request for June 9th for some flexibility on setbacks for a parcel at 119 West Waterside Lane. Decentralized wastewater management plan, that's been adopted. And a little bit later on, you're going to be hearing from us regarding committee to discuss a voluntary septic operations maintenance subscription service. Estuarine shoreline management plan, that committee did meet on May 19th. It was a very well attended meeting. There was a lot of discussion primarily about the existing and proposed shoreline typologies. So we anticipate there being another estuarine shoreline planning meeting in early to mid-August, and there's 3 things that are going to be focused on. A permitting fact sheet, finalizing the typologies, and refining the selection criteria for the project areas. So it's very exciting. The electric vehicle action plan, you'll be getting an update on that from our Deputy Planning Director, Kate Jones, here shortly. Resilient Coastal Communities, we've talked about that quite a bit. We are moving forward with Project Area 12, a stormwater management project, with that $45,000 in grant money. We're still working on the energy and water conservation guide. We hope to get that to you early summer as part of the AIA Activate. The LAD stormwater demonstration project, it's practically complete. The gutter and downspout is still on back order, but everything else has been finalized. It's beautiful. On your way out of Town Hall, if you look to the north, you'll see it. Kate's done a great job orchestrating and seeing that through. I did want to mention briefly, huge thank you to John Cece with Nest. He and planning board member Meade Gwen did go out and look at all the light fixtures that we had identified as part of the Dominion pilot project. So we were able to get a lot of really useful feedback with that. As always, excited about upcoming farmers markets at Dowdy Park. The first one's going to be Thursday, June 16th. And we do have some concerts, movies, and fitness opportunities planned. So we're putting a 2022 season calendar together that we hope to have out soon. And that wraps up the director's report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kelly? Great. Thank you, Kelly. Then that brings us to consideration of appointment of the decentralized wastewater master plan committee. Kelly?
Okay, so I'm very glad that Bob Muller's here in the audience with us today. He's been instrumental with all of this, and we're very grateful for that. As you know, this board adopted the decentralized plan at their May meeting. Part of that plan was a recommendation that we establish a voluntary septic subscription service. The service would allow property owners to pay an annual fee that would cover basic system maintenance, things like inspections and pumping, and make sure that they're completed on a timely schedule. This would also, we would hope, increase participation with the Septic Health Initiative. Staff wants to begin working on the project and have this back to the board for their next budget cycle for consideration. As part of the working group, Bob Muller has graciously offered to be a part of that working group, but we had several people help us with the technical aspects of the decentralized wastewater management plan, and we're asking that 2 of those people be appointed to the committee. The first would be Bob Rubin of NC State. The second would be Dr. Katie Hill with the University of Georgia. We believe they could both provide excellent technical assistance to the working group. In addition to those 2, there would be some staff members involved, myself, Deputy Director Kate Jones, Amy Miller, Deputy Town Manager, and Andy Garman, Town Manager. We would envision folding in other staff members as needed. What comes to mind would be the town engineer, the town attorney, and potentially for consideration, if the board would like, they could appoint a member of the Board of Commissioners to serve on the committee, as well as potentially someone from the planning board. But with that, also included was the proposed charge for this voluntary septic subscription service working group. So in addition to appointing those members, we would ask that the board offer any guidance, feedback, input on the charge that's been proposed.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Any questions for Kelly?
Yes, sir.
I will observe regarding the attachment or the charge. When we had the presentation, we talked a bit about the need for our sister communities to also take up this kind of effort. So I see that one of the questions is it creating a program that can be replicable? And I hope that it will be replicable, and that we will be transparent about how we develop this, so that they can sort of pick up any pieces and run with it, but not to do this for any of the other parties, any of the other towns, and not to get into sort of anybody else's weeds. That's my only comment about the charge. I would ask, is there a board member who would be interested in serving on this committee? I unfortunately did not ask in advance. Yes.
I'll be happy to help where needed if the board or the mayor chooses to appoint.
All right. Then thank you, Commissioner Brinkley. Then with that, I think a motion would be in order to appoint to this committee Dr. Bob Rubin, Dr. Kate Hill, Planning Director Kelly Wyatt, Kate Jones, the Deputy Director of Planning, Amy Miller, Andy Garman, and Commissioner Brinkley as a starting point to that committee. And then we would encourage the Planning Board to have discussion about which member would be interested in perhaps serving on the committee. Yes, Commissioner.
You got Mr. And I would suggest Bob Mueller be added as part of
Oh, yes, excuse me.
That was going to be my.
And former Mayor Bob Mueller, of
That's
course,
a
a
given.
member of the committee.
That's a given.
No, it's not a given, and my apologies for
I'll
the
make that
omission.
motion.
All right, then I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I've
Yes.
read all the material in the book, I mean, in our packet. Is there the formal charge? Unless I missed it.
The first two bullets, Renee.
Okay. All right.
Those being to improve the performance of septic systems in the town.
The goal and its success, that's those first two bullets, elements to be considered.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's what I read as the
Okay.
charge.
Okay. All right. I'm good with that.
All right, then have a motion. Did we vote?
No.
We have a motion, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Those of you who are willing to serve, we appreciate this. All right. Presentation of electric vehicle plan. Kate Jones.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for listening today. I'm here to present the final draft of the Electric Vehicle Action Plan. As you may recall, the Planning Board initiated discussion of electric vehicle charging stations in June 2021. And there were a few actions that followed, and the action plan was part of the Planning and Development Department fiscal year 2020 and 2021 strategic work plan. I just wanted to hit on, as you probably saw, this is a long document. It's fairly technical. So what I wanted to do today is just really summarize it as best possible and then go through the recommendations of this report and then pull out some key items that staff thinks will be useful for discussion, perhaps something a way forward if you would like that. So I did prepare some slides, but first I just wanted to read so everyone has a little bit of background about the purpose of this report. This will be brief. Developing a cohesive action plan for electric vehicles is an especially important undertaking for Nags Head. Tourism contributes a great deal to the town's economy. In 2019, Nags Head had a population of 2,900, yet saw roughly 170,000 visitors in 2021. Tourism employs 1/3 of the citizens of Dare County, of which Nags Head is a part. Nags Head is not served by ferry or bus system, meaning that all tourist traffic must arrive by vehicle. Okay, moreover, becoming a leader in EV charging infrastructure could help Nags Head to market itself, if it so wishes, as a go-to destination for vacationers, EV drivers looking for a convenient road trip with their electric car. This action plan will address two questions, and I'll go to the next slide. What will, with the numbers and use of EVs increasing, is there sufficient charging and other supporting infrastructure in the community to accommodate this increase, as well as the needs of the town, residents, businesses, and visitors? And what steps can the town take to improve any deficient or less than adequate conditions for electric vehicles? So, and this report really goes through a lot of information, and we won't go through all that today, but I've kind of just outlined the 5 steps that these Duke University students took when developing this plan. And the first was research, a lot of research into current trends of EVs. The environment here, we already went through some numbers on tourism. They looked at a lot of tourism numbers. They also looked at some future condition scenarios. And then they interviewed stakeholders. There's a series of stakeholders they interviewed, everyone from the director of the Chamber of Commerce to the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, to local business owners and developers, and all that information and feedback is in the plan. Then they went through some projections based on basically market projections on where EVs are going. They looked at specific costs of batteries and at what point will these batteries come down in price, making EVs more affordable. And then they actually developed some recommendations, and finally financial resources. So all this good information is in the plan. So like I said, this is a very technical document, and if y'all have questions or something that stood out, feel free to stop me anytime, ask a question. But the recommendations for the plan within the next year. These are things the town could do if so desired. Consider pursuing public charging locations, outreach and education to property managers and business owners. As we've mentioned, there's a lot of rentals, property rentals specifically, that people come here and stay in homes. Is there an opportunity to outreach and educate to these rental companies about the benefits of having a place for people to charge? Develop plans for a microgrid with partners. And we can go through what a microgrid is. I know I had to look it up a couple of times. And consider forming a working group with other municipalities. We don't live here in a vacuum, so would it be worth reaching out to some of our neighbors and seeing if this is something they're interested in? Again, these are recommendations from the plan within the next 2 years. You'll see some recommendations there. They range from financial incentives to developing relationships with NC utilities commissions and putting feelers out for what other people are doing. Again, it focuses on awareness of EV chargers and benefits. And then we get into some grant funding opportunities via, they identified a couple sources there, the Volkswagen settlement grant, as well as an NCDOT opportunity under the infrastructure bill. 2030, again, they looked at these timeframes, 1 year, 2 years, and then 2030. These were in line with what their projections showed. Again, this is a recommendation of the plan. But again, it would be something the town would have to think seriously about or not. Expand battery storage, and then hardening electric infrastructure. And this was another term that you may not be familiar with, but hardening is a combined system of actions that create a strong infrastructure to better protect utility customers. It can be everything from communications, it can be actual physical upgrades and improvements. It can be, having staff and response ready to go. So it's kind of a combination of things that would make a community more resilient. So staff reviewed this, and there are some opportunities that the board may want to think about in the near future. Again, I think the purpose of this presentation is really just to present to you the plan, to see if you have any concerns, request any edits or changes. And if so, we could address those. If not, we could simply make it available to the public for viewing. And beyond that, really, staff has identified a few actions that may be in line with the plan, but yet in line with current initiatives we have going on, such as the Public Services Master Plan. Would there be an opportunity to implement an EV charging equipment station inside? Which is one of the things mentioned in the report, is that we live in such a harsh environment with salt spray and flooding events. Would it make more sense to try something inside? And with the development of our new public services complex, is that something we could look into? We could pursue grant funding for a pilot project or a portion of our own fleet to be electrified. We could consider forming a working group with other municipalities, kind of open up the conversation and see how working together would be and what opportunities are out there. And then develop plans for a microgrid with partners. Partners meaning really our other communities, our neighbors, but also the Utilities Commission, Dominion Energy. And one thing to note here is, you may remember we have been working on an ETIP, Environmental Transitions Initiative Partnership Project, with the Department of Energy. It's a grant-funded program where they're specifically looking at energy resilience in our town and how to make our community more energy resilient during storm events. So this is an interesting kind of cross between two projects, but they're actually looking into potential locations for a microgrid in town and running some models to see where that would be. And so that could be something that ties in with this as well. And that's ongoing. And we do have an update from that group coming, I believe, next week. So again, it is a technical document. The Duke students worked for really a whole semester on it. And there's a lot of interesting information in there. And it's here should the board choose to pursue any of the actions mentioned, or simply make it available to the public, or really we'd like to know if you have any immediate changes or concerns about the plan.
Well, I'd like to consider the plan a little bit before we have a really robust discussion as a board.
Okay.
I'm curious about a couple of pieces of information
Mhm.
I'd like to know about. It would be nice to know where in the town and perhaps in the county charging stations are currently.
Mhm.
I would be curious, before forming any working groups, to know if any of our sister communities have plans to electrify any part of their fleets.
Mhm.
And if so, what are they thinking about doing? Third, I'd like to know if there's, and Commissioner Sears may know this, if there's been any sort of impact from electric vehicles on rental cottages, and is the ability to rapid charge at a cottage, is that something that's being advertised now? Is that becoming a feature that some renters are looking for?
You know, I put one in one of our rentals and I've had nobody use it, and it's advertised. And I haven't heard a whole lot in the rental realm that's been sought after.
Okay.
But we don't know that because everything but Tesla, you can plug right into your house socket.
Right.
So.
So I'd be curious about that, to some degree, how the market may or may not be responding to this. And then we've talked about having a site here at Town Hall, a charging station, get that done, and consider any other locations in town that might be appropriate for charging stations. Those are my immediate thoughts. Commissioner King.
It was a very comprehensive document.
Yes, it was.
And it came out of an idea of trying to have a charging station at Town Hall. So it sure did expand pretty rapidly.
It did.
I do have a concern. I'm not prepared to adopt this document at this time because I think we need to let the public look at it. We need to take a really long delve into it.
Okay.
But I was concerned about them talking about the town paying for private chargers at houses and different things. That would cause me heartburn.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. It said town installed 100, 250 chargers in between both private and public. Private to me means private property.
Yeah, and I think that could have been worded differently, because I think what the students meant was generally within the town have that amount available to whether they're public and private. So I think that's one comment, is they could clarify that.
I think we need to take baby steps with this program. We need to see if it's going to work, number one. And the only way you find that out is if you have a station and find out the demand for it before we go developing a whole lot of resources into it.
Okay.
I think he has great ideas. I think probably the town could start looking at some electric vehicles in its fleet.
Okay.
So, I'd like to explore this a lot further and give back other feedback.
Okay.
And I'd like your citizen feedback on the plan.
Yes.
Mhm.
Agreed. Commissioner Brinkley.
Like Commissioner Coon said, we talked about a charging station for the town, and it's delved into a 69-page PowerPoint, which is just incredible to me. I would want to spend much more time going through it and not obviously committed to approving the plan at this time. I just think we need to do more work on it ourselves to understand it before we release it to the public and take a big bite of this apple. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanders.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It'd be interesting to see what kind of grants are out there still for, that would really be helpful, especially in developing a few of these and, private home and the public sector. And I think it would be pretty cool to get a couple charging stations here at the town, like we were looking at, and maybe look into electrical vehicles for the town too. So.
Okay. Yeah, they do identify a couple grant opportunities, but I think we obviously before that have to figure out the direction.
Yes.
That the board would want to go, but there are opportunities. Yes. Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Kate.
Can I just clarify? So I heard that some of the board was interested in the public's comment on this, but maybe another board member didn't want to put it out to the public. So I just wanted to get some clarification. Did you want?
I thought we were looking at looking at it ourselves before it's released, but
I was just thinking while we look at it, we release it to the public, get their feedback too.
I may be wrong, but I saw this report on LinkedIn 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't the final draft, but yes.
Yes.
I think they did.
Yeah. So it sounds like we release it to the public and let's get some
feedback. Okay.
Yeah. And then take this up at another meeting, perhaps,
Posted it.
with a set of recommendations.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is consideration of an event sponsorship policy.
Okay, jumping right in, staff has prepared this event sponsorship policy that's in your packet today for consideration following the inclusion of sponsorship opportunities within the updated consolidated fee schedule, which was part of the operating budget you looked at earlier today. This request originated with the Committee for Art and Culture to pursue community sponsorships for entertainment and events within the town. It's a fairly long document. There's a lot of criteria in there for the types of sponsorships, the actual sponsorship agreements, permissible and impermissible sponsors, message content, and just some general conditions as well. And I did realize that here in this first item, the general statement, we talk about sponsorship of government programs, services, and events, realizing that all that's been accounted for in the consolidated fee schedule was concerts and movies. So I don't know if we would revise the policy to reflect the consolidated fee schedule, or just acknowledge that at this point, all that sponsorships have even been thought about encompassing has only been concerts and movies and nothing beyond that. I apologize before I brought this to you. I should have noted that.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? I'll start down here with Commissioner Sanders first.
So all it states right now is that it's just for concerts and movies.
Well, earlier, I don't know how easy that would be to pull up, but as part of the consolidated fee schedule that was adopted earlier in the meeting, we only lay out what sponsorship might look like in terms of music and movies. We haven't addressed any other type of programs or services. So even though this language as part of the general policy statement mentions that, the only thing that has even been contemplated in terms of sponsorship would be music and movies.
What about the yoga program at Dowdy Park, which is currently sponsored, I believe?
Yeah, so currently Village Realty sponsors that. I don't believe we included that as part of the fee schedule as well. So that might be something we need to bring back to you. Village Realty has graciously done that for probably the past 5 years, outside of having it formalized as part of our document, as part of the policy. But it should be included in there as well. So I can include fitness opportunities.
Yeah, and that would be broad enough to cover any kind of exercise or fitness class that might occur at Dowdy or at any of the other parks. Commissioner Brinkley.
And the only other sponsorship would be the yoga. The town has never gone after something like this before.
Correct. Sponsorships would be new to the town of Nags Head.
It just seems like such a far reach from what we have done in the past. How Nags Head has been you're commercializing an event that we're holding, basically. And it just seems like such a far reach for us to do that. But that's my concern at this point.
Okay.
Mayor.
Commissioner Cahoon.
Thank you, Kelly, for pointing out the differences. I think we may need to revise the general policy statement a bit to be more definitive. My concern is that while I understand the movies and the music and so forth, how far reaching we intend this to be. And since this is pretty much a 180 departure of the town's philosophy, that we get some public comment either through a public meeting. I'm not suggesting necessarily a public hearing, but a public meeting to get some feedback from our citizens about it. To give us some general guidance as to what their feeling is before we adopt something that they don't know about. I applaud the Arts and Leisure Committee for bringing it forward and suggest that we carry it one step further into the citizenry.
Thank you. Commissioner Sears.
Not a lot. Thank you for your time with it. I and the Arts Committee would probably want to do what Renee said and Kevin said, because it's not something that the town has done in a long time. Although that it could be beneficial in a lot of ways, it probably needs to, be a slower progress to get that in place. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think we understand the value of sponsorship for certain programs. I mean, to have a quality selection of movies, concerts, fitness programs at our venues makes sense. I mean, and it's a way to have those quality programs. I would be concerned that citizens would start to show up with banners being displayed and things that we've just never seen before, to note sponsorship. And so I agree. I think it's as much sort of giving the public a heads up as anything else that we're getting ready to do something that's different from what we've been doing. And that
buy-in from them.
And get some buy-in from them. And understanding the good purpose, but also understanding that it's going to be a different look, and making sure they're comfortable with that, make sure the public is bought into that. Yes, ma'am.
May I add that we get the attorney involved? after reading the city of Boston's legal woes over flag flying and not allowing certain flag, they got taken to court and they lost. I'd like to make sure that whatever we do, we'll meet the lawful standard and us not end up in court about it. If we tell somebody no.
Yeah, I discussed that with the manager when I had a chance to take a look at the policy, and I can't say that there are definite First Amendment concerns about this policy, but there could be. The one thing that's sort of unique about it is that this would constitute a limited public forum because it's a designated sort of forum for certain types of events as opposed to just a generalized open public forum. So that does give the town more leeway in terms of what it can regulate and require. But having said that, I still want to take a look at some of the language in here and make sure that I don't have any concerns about it running afoul of the First Amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. That brings us next to committee reports, and I'll start with Commissioner Sears. Anything?
Just want to make everybody aware that the Tourism Board is going to be having a public hearing discussion about the Soundside Park this Monday at the Haven on the Beach location. So if you have any questions, want to voice an opinion, which would be greatly appreciated, that's the time to show up.
Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Cahoon.
Got Ed met last week, finalized the budget, which this board had already adopted. All the other boards, I think except one, have adopted. Has one new member from the Board of Education. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brady.
From Jeanette's Pier, due to such staff shortages, Director Remage just sent out an email update. We'll be meeting in person later this summer, but just talked about some of the maintenance items that they're doing and also about the waste water event that was held. It was cut short by adverse weather, but they did have a successful event and were able to declare a winner. So a lot of exciting things going on at the pier this summer. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
From the Steering Committee, everything's available on the website that you can look at. But just a short synopsis, they identified 10 spots to look at for erosion and to try to preserve the shorelines, and they're going to narrow that down to 3 sites and begin some work on those for a living shoreline to see if we can improve the conditions on the sound. So it's a very, very exciting project.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That brings us then to the presentation of the Public Services Master Plan. David.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. It's been several months since we last reported out on the progress of the Public Services Master Plan. And so today here with us is the design firm of Oakley Collier. We've got Tim Oakley and David Griffin here to go ahead and report out on their progress that has occurred over the past several months. There's been a lot of ongoing work in coordination with staff to include existing condition surveys, some preliminary site planning, as well as preliminary floor planning. And so we've been busy trying to maintain a pretty fast-paced schedule in order to move forward all the way through the construction. They're also going to report out on a preliminary schedule so we can establish a timeline for certain activities to include permitting, bidding, all the way through to commencing construction. At the tail end of this, after the presentation as well as discussion, we're going to request a budget amendment and a contract amendment to go ahead and cover a portion of the design services to keep this train moving forward. So at this time, I'll go ahead and bring up Tim Oakley to go ahead and present the progress update.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Since the last time we've met, we've done quite a lot of work with our team in trying to get all of what we're calling the master plan squared away, and I'm gonna have to have a course in making this work. Oh, there we go. Small, hard to read. But the good news is we've finally got all the buildings in the right places. And as you knew when you interviewed us months ago, there were challenges to getting all the pieces located on the site. And the most challenging has been around the water distribution plant and all the things that are buried under site that we know about, and we hope we've found them all, which ultimately led us to locating the new building for water distribution right in the middle of the site near the existing access road to the drive to the firing range. We have been able to situate the building such that we can stay within the guidelines for the camera regulations and the pond setback, the 500-foot setback. One of the challenges that we've had was we could not install a new septic system that was needed to support water distribution. So we are actually tying into the system that is located at the existing plant by means of a pump. We have some tentative agreement or acknowledgement from CAMA that they would allow us to do that. That system is actually about a 1,500 gallon system, far more capacity than we need. So we're able to stay within regulations of meeting capacity for each individual site. We've also been able to work through the planning, floor plans of the buildings, to help staff understand how we would go about building these, also helping our engineers understand some of our water runoff criteria and access points for the building. This particular building being the fleet facility, which facility on the left, my left, all the administration in the middle, and then maintenance on the right. There's a larger plan for what I'll call the working of the staff and moving around the building itself. There are some other tweaks we have to do with this moving forward, but this is where we are today. We're very comfortable with our master plan and the concept plans we've created for space planning. Other spaces on the site are just parking garages, if you will, for the equipment on the public works. All of these buildings are enclosed so that they are kept safe from the environment and conditions of weather. Some of these are just square boxes, really, just pre-engineered and block buildings to house the equipment. Water distribution, again, there are staff areas, meeting areas, toilet facilities, and the workshop areas. And finally, the administrative building that we have created a assembly space, can be seminar, training, etc. Shared break areas. We've set up future spaces in the corner of the building can be used in an event of storm management. It gives us some additional space, as well as an attendant. I'm sorry for the bottom there. Get out of the way. Maybe I won't. But they have an attendant service area at the base of the plan. All again, we're about 95% complete with the master plan. The engineers are scheduling our scoping meeting with CAMA and the other 14 agencies that participate in that. That meeting will take place within the next 3 weeks. They feel we're at a 96% comfort rate that while they will make some tweaks and some changes, suggestions, that what we have in place should meet all the necessary criteria. Once we have our final submission, which we are trying to target into this month, June, to go to permitting applications for site work, that process will take up to 75 days. In order to maintain the town's schedule We need to keep moving forward with building design, what we call vertical design. So we would anticipate, assuming approval for full planning documentation, if that happens in July, we'd have completion of all of the plans by mid-September. We would tentatively release the plans for bid in October, receive bids November the 3rd, have a recommendation back to the board for approval at your second meeting in November 22nd, and then present all of this, have it in a package to submit to LGC by December the 6th. And then, assuming approvals of that, you would have a mid to late start of construction in January of 2023. That's where we are right now. Our hope is that the board will allow us to keep moving forward. We did lose some time in the beginning of the project that due to weather and survey and just the extent of the items that are on that site, that documentation phase took about a month and a half longer than we had anticipated. So we lost a little bit of time in the front end, and our group is working to get us back on track. I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
I have a couple. You might zoom in on that plan, or you might be able to do it just at that scale. So a citizen coming in to resolve some issue at Public Works. So that's the door that they're coming in there.
Right. There's
And then
a window that's here that services all incoming traffic. This is kind of general reception, if you will.
okay. And then I wonder if you could jump to the site plan and talk about a citizen coming in to the brush yard, what we've been calling the brush yard, or the, and you probably have to zoom in quite a bit to do that.
This is not my forte here.
The percent in the middle.
I'm trying here.
There you go.
Gonna go up here. There we go. Let's try. Sorry. Say, don't grade me on my technical skill here.
I'll try it for you.
You may have to. I can't seem to. There we go.
That would work, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so if someone's coming for yard debris, the plan is that they would enter at this point to the site. There is an attendant that is located in the building that would be before you actually get into the debris area to unload. There's a elevated ramp that starts with the corner of the building. It elevates about 5 feet to a pad at the top. The dumpsters would be, the roll-offs are located along the edge so that you back in and unload your yard debris, and then you would leave the site by going down the drive on the back side and around. So it's all one-way traffic for the general public. The site would be gated so that there's, during off hours, there's a gate situation here and a gate on the other side that keeps anyone from general public from accessing the general dump areas of the site. There's a service yard for staff that gives them maneuverability for all the roll-offs and the dumpsters to move them and facilitate the needs of the public.
Could you talk a little bit about the ramp and the height of the drop-off area relative to the dumpsters and how people would put things in the beds?
We had some conversations with staff about the types of roll-offs they use and the heights of the roll-offs. And it was determined that if we kept it in the, and I'm going to say 5 feet, it may be 6, I don't remember right off the top of my head, that when you come up to the top of the ramp, there's a curb. The general public's not going to drive off or go off the edges. There is a concrete 2-foot high curb that keeps everybody contained. And at the top of that curb, that would coincide with about the top of the dumpster area. So that it's not a situation where you're having to try to ring the basket. It's right at the top of the unloading area. It would also facilitate if someone backs up and have somewhat of a dump trailer, which I don't think they're not allowed at this facility, are they, David? A dump trailer.
As long as they're single axle.
Yeah, that was right, your single axle. So we've kept them contained. There are quite a number of containers in that side, and I'm sorry, I cannot read that small print there. We've talked to staff about the number of dumpsters they would like to have there to be serviced, and we've been able to accommodate that number for staff.
And so back to the gate location, can the public get to the main park, the first parking area, to have access to the building before they get to the gate, or do they have to go through a gate first?
They would be able to access this parking lot and the front door without having to access a gate.
Okay. But they would have to have a gate to enter the dump area.
Yes, sir. From this point back is secure.
Right.
And then from this point, this is staff parking in this lot. From this point, there's a gate so that you can't get back. And this is fence that goes back and closes off to the building.
Okay.
In the past, we've had staff helping people put things in bins, using heavy equipment. And the idea would be that there wouldn't be so reliant on that the public could put things directly into the bins and there wouldn't be as much management required by staff. And so say, you had an attendant that couldn't be there and you still wanted to keep the brush yard or the bulk yard open, you might be able to handle that with some of the administrative staff, just checking people through and, issuing passes if they need to, and then instructing people which bin to put things in, but not necessarily having to do something for somebody that's there. It gives more flexibility in the future for how we staff the bulk yard.
Well, and not having a resident have to lift something up to the lip of a bin.
Correct.
Yeah, we had watched some of the residents in the current situation come up and having to go into the dumpster containers. This would be just open and you can pitch it right in.
Board members, any questions?
Go ahead. Not right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So David, there's a couple of actions that go with this.
Yes, sir. So the second part is a request for a contract amendment, which would cover a portion of the vertical design components in order to progress the plan forward and move towards construction. So staff request Board of Commissioners approval to authorize the following. That would be 1, a budget amendment in the amount of $100,000 to cover the initial cost of the building design services. And 2 would be to authorize the town manager to proceed with a contract amendment with the firm of Oakley Collier in the amount of $100,000.
Thank you. I think we can do that as one motion.
You can, if I could say one thing real quick,
Yes.
just to clarify it, and Amy can better explain this, but we're just asking for a small portion of the amount we need for the vertical construction design. We're going to come back in July, and that's probably going to be for the remaining amount. And I'm sure this was already said, but that's going to be a substantial amount more than what's being asked for now. This just gets us through the month of June.
Right.
And then, for budgetary reasons, we wanted to ask for the remainder in the next fiscal year.
Okay. Then a motion would be in order.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve a budget amendment in the amount of $100,000 to cover the initial cost of building design services and also to authorize the town manager to proceed with a contract amendment with the firm of Oakley Collier in the amount of $100,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, David.
All right, thank you. And I think I'm up again.
Oh, okay. Yes, that brings us to the Beach Nourishment Master Plan update. David.
Yes, thank you. Today with us is Brian Joyner from the coastal engineering firm of Moffitt and Nickel. He's going to go ahead and give an update to the multi-decadal Beach Nourishment Master Plan. This is going to cover the year 2 task. I think it was last July you heard a presentation from Moffitt and Nickel about year 1 and some of the findings that occurred with the various tasks that were completed during that time frame. This is an update with further field investigation and analysis and engineering for year 2. And then also at the tail end of this, Brian is going to go ahead and give an update to our 2022 beach restoration project and a preliminary schedule that has been passed along by the contractor. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll pass it over to Brian Joyner.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the chance to speak on this again. David, thanks for the introduction. It's good to be back down here again. Yeah, David covered the content, I think, or the outline, but I'll hop to it again. So I'd like to give a brief overview of the progress we've made over the last calendar year on the master plan. A lot of it has been field investigations of the potential dredging borrow area offshore of Nags Head that would supply the sand needed for a 50-year beach nourishment program. We've had a couple of field investigations on that. And then we talk a little bit more about the nourishment design and the nourishment sort of scheduling and cycling alternatives that we've looked at over the last year as well. And I want to talk a little bit about the environmental impact analysis and the permitting phase that you authorized earlier this year that we're starting this summer, starting to pursue with the environmental impact statement and some agency collaboration. And like David said, we'll talk a little bit about the construction project coming up soon. And I have a schedule on that, some information kind of hot off the presses as we get there. So if you remember, the master plan is made up of 2 large sets of components: the engineering analysis, plan development, which is the top left. So looking at different alternatives for nourishment, trying to achieve certain levels of protection, using the beach and the dune to protect property and infrastructure behind it. And then the environmental or programmatic permitting and environmental side. And the funding we put into the programmatic permitting, but really the funding analysis and understanding of funding walks through the whole process. And that's something we'll revisit at several points during the process. So to make sure that you're thinking about how to fund the program as you're asking for permissions and developing the designs. So a small review from last year. This is exactly the same slide I presented last year. At the end of year 1, we'd looked at a lot of available data. We looked at the level of protection the current beach sort of design and beach condition offers, and evaluated what it would take to get to higher levels of protection, like different kinds of storm intensities. And then we've done some analysis to determine the long-term, 50-year sand needs. I'll review that number just in a little bit. So from there, after having calibrated a shoreline change model and dealt with some of the modeling and calculations from last year, we knew sort of how much sand we would need over the next 50 years. We knew the borrow area is called S1, it's a Corps of Engineers designation. We knew how big that was, and we knew kind of where we needed to investigate to try to match that borrow area to the sand need. So last year, starting in about June, we had our surveyor subconsultant Geodynamics and our geotechnical subconsultant Amdrill go out and take vibrocores and surveys within that borrow area. The vibrocores are about 70% done. I'll get into the reason for that, not 100% completion in just a moment. And then we've also been able to evaluate what dredging that full borrow area to a certain depth would actually mean for the wave climate and the sand transport climate on the beach, because those do actually relate. We've got some updates on that. And we've also been able to look at some nourishment cycles. We are also working on the draft engineering report, but I don't have a lot of to share on that specific report today specifically. So getting into the survey, this is a map of the borrow area offshore of Nags Head. It covers most of the southern area of the town. It doesn't go all the way to the north end of town, but would easily service the whole town in terms of being able to use a hopper dredge to bring sand to the beach. We know that the elevations are, in this case, the brighter colors are shallower and the bluer colors are deeper. So there does seem to be a trough kind of in that eastern side of the bar area. As you go from the near shore out to the offshore, there's a deeper area, and then this bar area is more of a shoal and ridge system that's indicated by the yellow and red colors. It includes the bar areas you've already been using. They're the boxes in the southern end of the larger box, and that's where the post-Dorian nourishment project will come out of. But we're looking and exploring in the northern areas that hadn't really been investigated before to find the sand we need. So this part of the survey was done to understand the depths, and more so at the moment to understand with the geophysical survey if there's any archaeological objects or anything else in that bar area that we would have needed to avoid when doing the vibrocores last summer. So that was done first. It provided the clearance for the vibrocores, and it also gives us the bed elevations for volume calculations later on. So then the vibrocores were started last summer. This is a map of the same bar area, and all those colored dots or markers are the location of a core that Amdro went out and tried to take from the seabed. The green ones are the ones that have been completed. I guess they're purple, hard to tell from this color. The blue or purple colored ones are the ones that have not been completed yet. The reason some have been completed, some have not, is Amdro worked pretty diligently last summer to complete all of them within one season, but as the summer went on, there was some shoaling in Oregon Inlet and the weather started turning a bit worse. It became unsafe for them, in their captain's opinion, to keep going in and out of Oregon Inlet every few days to offload cores and supply the vessel. So they suspended that operation. They're looking to pick that back up again very soon, as they say, as the Corps of Engineers can have the Oregon Inlet channel opened up enough for them to safely get through there. What we found, so they took those green cores. We looked at the cores themselves and indicated samples we wanted taken out of the cores. I'll show you a picture of a core in a minute. And they've been lab testing those samples and at least giving us the data back on the cores they've taken. What we found, one finding from this so far is you can see the red shaded areas on the left or the western side of the Barrow area. Looking at those in terms of the material present, it's more silty than sand. We do have some concern about being able to use those specific areas for beach nourishment. So this has given us some useful information. We now know where we can expect to find useful beach quality sand and where we might not be able to. We can expect that trend to continue, especially the leftmost red box. We expect that trend of silt to continue down through the south of the Barrow area. So we're actually we're not going to explore those 10 cores that have a line through it on the left side. I don't think it's worth spending effort on those cores. We'll focus more on areas that we think are viable for beach nourishment. And we expect all the rest of those cores to be taken the rest of the summer, and then the lab test to be done in the fall. Nope, wrong button. I had two things circled on that map, and for those two cores, I've pulled up pictures of what those cores actually look like. So it's a little hard to see on screen. If you've got the packet, it's more visible. This is actually, this color sand here is all sand. It doesn't look very silty at all, maybe a little bit of silt content that would wash out during the dredging. It seems to be beach quality from what we can tell so far. So we're encouraged by that. And another core looks effectively the same. We see that throughout most of the Barrow area, except, like I said, in that red box. So we're encouraged by the findings so far. And if you ever wanted to actually look at the cores, the town actually has them in storage. So they're here if you ever want to look at the sand yourself and see what it might look like. Though it will change color once it goes out on the beach. So that's what we found from the geotechnical investigations so far. We'll continue to explore that and continue to feed match those volumes with the sand we think we need. So the other thing we wanted to look at is both from an engineering standpoint, giving you the best advice and giving you some idea of what the effects would be of using the Barrow area, and also for permitting an EIS standpoint. We'd want to understand the impact of if we dredge that whole Barrow area to sort of depths that make sense to use. We would go to different depths, different parts of it. But if we did do that dredging plan, we wanted to compare the wave effects or the effects on the waves. So we used our wave model of the area. The picture on the left is the seabed bathymetry today, or at least from the surveys we have to date. Before we do any more dredging in the Barrow area, you can see it's a little lighter colored here, which means it's a little shallower. And then if we dredge it on the right side of the screen, that's a deeper color. And so by dredging that, we know we're going to change the waves directions a little. We're going to change the wave heights a little, especially some of the bigger storm waves. So we ran that wave model and found that they just, honestly, I promise you these are two different pictures. They look almost exactly the same, but they are different. It's encouraging, though, we don't see much difference in both the wave height spectrum that we see, the distribution in wave heights or the colors. So they look very similar between today and if we dredge the whole borrow area. And actually the intensity from direction also looks about the same. We don't expect big differences in either height or directionality, which is good for sediment transport consistency. We did see there are some differences. I put too much on this slide. I apologize. But it was exciting to me, and I just wanted to share it, I suppose. But if we take the 50th percentile difference, or the mean difference, the average, this is the top left box, you really don't see any difference at all between today and if we dredge the whole borrow area in terms of wave height. That's a good thing. Being who we are, we wanted to see at what point we could break it and what point, we did see a difference. So if you get all the way up to the 99th percentile, like 99% of the waves are within this plot. We do see some differences by dredging the borrow area. We see some increases in wave height between the borrow area and the shore, but these are less than like 8 or 9 inches in wave height on the biggest waves. So again, not much actual difference. We expect very minor effects of that wave change on the shoreline, certainly well within the annual variability of waves that you see anyway. I mean, there's not just one wave, it's a spectrum throughout the year. And so we don't really see at the moment that dredging the borrow area would have any noticeable impact on the beach, which is what we hoped we'd find, but wanted to go ahead and prove it. From there, we've been able to establish and use that same wave model and some of those findings and our shoreline change model to look at what would some of the different alternatives for beach nourishment look like and how would they perform. Reminding you from last year when we did our long-term statistical analysis, so we looked at all the beach profile survey data that was available that before we started working with y'all a couple of years ago, and then what we've taken over the last couple of years from the monitoring surveys. And we looked at annual erosion rates, we looked at storm effects and various things and put it into a statistical model to try to get some extra confidence limits or confidence information around things. And so depending on how we look at it, if we just look at the data itself, is the blue curve. And if we look at the annual data and then we kind of give some extra weight to not irregularly occurring big storms like Dorian and some of the other named storms, we see a range of needing between about 40 million cubic yards or maybe 55, 56 million cubic yards over the next 50 years to nourish the beach to a design that gives you this level of protection we've been talking about. So we believe we need between 40 and about 55 million cubic yards over that lifetime. And we do see so far, we believe that exists in the borrow area. We're still working to confirm that, of course, as we get the data from out there. So I think I actually missed a couple. It's okay. I didn't miss anything super significant. We'll keep going through. So that's the volume we need to establish a level of protection that we think we're looking at. To remind you, the level of protection really is, if you think about the storm surge and waves coming in, first they impact the submerged beach or the foreshore slope that starts to change the waves. Then it impacts the dry beach, which further breaks the waves. And then they impact the dune, which hopefully blocks the storm surge and the waves from anything behind it. And we want the dune to be robust enough that as the waves impact it, the dune doesn't erode so far as it gets overtopped. So that's really what we're thinking about level of protections. How much reservoir is there? How much capacity is there in that dune to resist the storm surge and the waves and provide protection for the things behind it? And sort of the philosophy we usually go on when designing these kinds of master plans is it's not necessarily an equal amount of sand at every location because the waves are different and some other things are different at different locations. The houses and infrastructure are at different locations behind the dune or around the dune. We want to try for equal protection and use the sand needed in every location that gives you that level of protection sort of equivalent across the town. And that's what we've been doing. It's what we talked about, I think, last year. This is also updated from last year, but effectively the same kind of information. If we start at the north end of the town on the left and move to the southern end of the town on the right, these are just representative survey stations where we've evaluated how much volume exists on the beach now with the blue line, how much volume with the orange line would be needed to have say a 25-year return period or 4% annual chance damage level of protection is the orange line. And then the 50-year return period, or 2% annual chance, so like half the risk compared to the 25-year every year. In the green line, how much we would need. And so you see in this furthest north or furthest left bar, the existing beach with the blue has about a 50-year level of protection compared to, so the blue and the green are about equal, which means that you've got about a 50-year level of protection volume up in the north. As we move further south, we see that trend change a little. Certainly as we get down into reach 3, reach 4, southern ends of the town, we see that in this location that I'm pointing at now, in the first circle, the existing beach doesn't quite have a 25-year level of protection. It would need a little more to achieve that, but it would need a lot more to achieve a 50-year. Yes, ma'am.
For my own edification, what location is that? I know the reaches, but
Yeah.
what location, so we could maybe identify it in our minds?
I confess, I did not remind myself of that street location. I was thinking about that sitting there, and I wasn't able to go look it up. So it's just south of halfway along the length of the town, but I honestly don't have a good answer for that question.
Could you get it to David and have David get it to us?
I could do. Yeah, I can update that slide. I'll just put street names on there.
Thank you.
So we see that trend moving on through the south of the town. But anyway, I think where we got to last year, and we kind of are following that trend still, is that a 25-year level of protection seems fairly achievable without changing the beach design too much. A 50-year level of protection would require a lot more sand placed in the dune in several places. And to illustrate that a little bit, the black line here is, and this is at, I think, that same location we were just talking about, that unknown location. The black line is the existing beach profile as of last summer. And the orange line, and we might modify this a little bit differently to connect a little bit more to the existing dune, but the orange line is the increase in the dune and the increase in the beach width we'd need to actually attain that 25-year level of protection. So we would, before thinking about any advanced nourishment, any erosion capacity for the beach, if we were just going to establish it today, we would need to build up something like this orange line to have that 25-year return period hurricane protection. And again, I might connect it back a little nicer here. But to get the 50-year, we would need to raise the dune crest all the way up to 25 and then come down. It'd be a wider dune, and the beach width would need to go out even further to resist that storm. So really want to minimize the potential for overtopping and breach. And we believe for that larger hurricane that's what it would take to do that. So having kind of established what that 25-year return period beach and dune would look like, we were able to then plug that into the shoreline change model and then plug in some advanced nourishment. So when we build these things, we build that level of protection first, but then we have the contractor push the beach out even further so it can erode back over a period of 5 to 6 to 8 years and still have that protection at the end of that cycle. So we built that into the shoreline change model. We looked at so far what would happen if you didn't do any nourishment. How far back would we expect the shoreline to go? And that's sort of for the environmental impact statement. We want to establish the no action, how that doesn't meet your needs, basically, and how much it doesn't. So we can say why there's a purpose need to do the things that you do want to do. And then we looked at a 4 and 6 year nourishment cycle so far to see how those would perform. Again, this is looking at the constructed beach. The red would be, say, that level of protection. So then we need to push the beach out to the lighter color shading so that as this erodes back at the end of the nourishment cycle, so in 6 to 7, 8 years, you'd end up having that red still, and you'd still have that protection. And if we do that, this is how messy it gets when we start looking at all the different lines that come out of the model. We're only looking at the southern end of the town, and you really can't see the difference between these lines between, say, 1 year after nourishment up to 6 years after nourishment. So if we zoom in a little, this particular slide shows in one of the more erosive areas in the south of the town, if we start from the black line, 2018, pre-nourishment, so right before you nourished it back in 2019, the year before that, the eroded condition. If we built out the project and then let it erode back over a 4-year nourishment cycle, we believe, we could achieve having at or better than the May 2018 shoreline position with that 4-year nourishment cycle. We believe we can also do the same thing with the 6-year. But if you didn't do any nourishment from that eroded condition, 4 years later, obviously the shoreline would retreat and it would be back near the current toe of the dune. So we've kind of established that with the model, so we can say to the regulatory agencies, the permitting agencies, why the nourishment, especially the master plan approach, is really needed. And we also see there's just not that, we know we can set it up so there wouldn't be that much difference in shoreline position at the end of the cycle between a 4-year and a 6-year nourishment cycle. However, the main difference between a 4-year and a 6-year nourishment cycle is the amount of sand you have to put out to start with. It's not linear. You need to put out more to achieve that 6-year cycle because it begins to erode faster in the beginning. So we're still evaluating exactly what those needs would be, and we can have updates to David on those as we meet and talk through some of these through the summer. So I'm going to just stop and ask if there's any more questions there. That's kind of the end of the sort of engineering side of the presentation before I get to the environmental. Okay.
Do those 4-year cycles include sea level rises? Are those projected in there?
So yes, sea level rise is factored in. The amount of sand needed to achieve that 4-year and 6-year cycle each time, I say each decade, because you only see sea level rise impacts on maybe a decadal basis. It is relatively slow. So as it occurs, probably the amount of sand needed to achieve that 4-year or 6-year cycle increases as you go through time. So if you needed 1 million yards today, 1 million cubic yards today, you would need maybe more than that 10 years from now to get the same end result.
It's not that much.
It's not. You're right. It's incremental. It's not a massive difference over time, because the beach also does respond to sea level rise as well. It's a dynamic process, but that is something we want to write into the report. Certainly, it's a good thing to make clear in our documents. That's a good question. Thank you. Okay, so if we move to and I'll speak for Doug. Doug Huggett's our environmental lead on this. I will speak for him, or attempt to. He certainly knows more about the environmental side than I do. I speak of the environmental impact statement or environmental side and the permitting separately because they are two different things. The EIS or the NEPA process, because we'll be asking for a federal permit, so it's a federal involved action. So if we walk through this process to satisfy NEPA and Corps of Engineers environmental regulations, it's really intended to be something that's done during design. It's not meant to be you design things the way you want it and then you just tell them what you want to do and get permission. The NEPA process is meant to help you plan through. And so that's why we're starting it as we continue the design. It establishes purpose and need. It goes through what are the different kinds of actions you can take to meet that need, what are the impacts of those, and then what's the public consultation on that. So you end up doing the environmental thinking and the design thinking at the same time. And the Corps has this really handy flow chart that kind of tells you the different paths you're on. I won't go through it all. The 3 results really are, if it's a simple project and you can say that there's really not a documentable impact, you can get a categorical exclusion or a CADX so that you don't have to do the full EIS. We don't expect that to happen here. There is a possibility you could evaluate that there's no significant impacts to consider, so you could get a finding of no significant impact and a full EIS would not be needed. We're fairly certain from experience that this kind of project, because of dredging the borrow area and the impacts from the borrow area, the impacts of placing sand on the beach and turtles and other species, that we would need a full EIS. And that's what we're prepared to walk through. So we would end up walking through that EIS process, the record of decision, the public consultation, and end up with an implementable plan. So Doug and Don and some of the others have started working on that. It involves various analyses that they're carrying out. We think it'll take about 18 months, and we're starting now. So 1.5 years from now, we should be through that process. And then the permitting itself. So that's the stage where we've walked through most of the EIS process, and we've completed the design, and we can submit these permit applications to the agencies. We believe that'll overlap about 6 months. So we'll start that next summer. It'll take about 12 months, we think, to get through that process. It'll overlap with the EIS. And that's where we start responding to specific agency concerns about different species and different impacts and building those conditions into the master plan permits. I will not walk through this entire schedule. It's the schedule that was in our contract amendment most recently. It basically has the engineering tasks in blue and the permitting and environmental tasks in green. And we are currently here at this dashed line as of the beginning of June. So we finished most of the engineering analysis that we need to do. We believe there'll be some additional modeling and analysis to confirm some things about the Barra area and maybe about ways to address some of the more accelerated erosion rates in certain parts of the town versus others. Maybe there's ways to manage those a little bit differently. But our big task on the engineering side from here is still to finish that those vibra cores in the Barra area this summer, analyze that data, and then write the engineering report over the rest of this year and into the beginning of next year. While we're doing that, the environmental team is pushing their things forward so that we expect an estimated end date of about the middle of 2024 for the EIS and permitting process. So just you have this to refer to, and we can always talk through any specifics on this in discussion or afterwards. So that is the master plan update. If there's any questions, I could take those, or I can move on to the post-Dorian construction.
Back to the question Commissioner Cahoon had. David and I were looking at the plans. It looked like station 855 is what was being referred to.
855 or 895? It was one of those.
Okay, 855 is just south of Tides Drive.
Okay.
And so,
yeah, thank you for that. All right. So I only have one slide on the post-Dorian Beach Nourishment Project construction. And this is basically what we anticipate for the schedule of construction. The months along the bottom, and I'll give Sam Morrison credit for this, who's not going to be managing that construction project from our side. The months are on the bottom. The other bars correlate with the months. You can see the colors changing. We're having a pre-construction conference with Great Lakes, the contractor, and with the permitting agencies in the town next week. I think it's Tuesday. That'll be in person down here. And after that, they'll start giving us formal construction submittals that we'll need to review and get back. We expect that to happen over the next few weeks. I'll go ahead and say this schedule is slightly outdated as of some information I got from Great Lakes this morning. And I'll update that in a minute. So the original plan was to mobilize their equipment offshore, get the dredge down here, start setting up pipelines early July, and that would take them several weeks. And then they would start to put things on the beach mid-July into early August to really start pumping sand onto the beach the first part of August with their relatively smaller hopper dredge to Dodge Island. The idea is that the smaller dredge works well in Reach 2, where the sand thickness is not as great as in Reach 3 and Reach 4 for the placement. And then the Ellis Island, a much larger hopper dredge, would come middle to August or later. However, this morning, yesterday and this morning, we heard that due to them being sort of done to the extent they can on another project where the Ellis Island was deployed, they expect the Ellis Island to come much sooner, maybe starting mid-July. So you could see nourishment in the southern part of the town with the larger dredge by the middle of July, which means they'll need to start mobilizing to the beach sooner as well. So that's evolving. We'll keep David updated on all the schedules we hear, and we can do a forecast for where beach closures or beach action on the beach would be at any given time. We'll try to keep track of that. And then we'll also start reviewing submittals and having people, spend more time with the contractor directly, getting volume sent and understand, making any changes to the design needed based on their submittals. And then we expected them to have the project completed by the first week of September. If the Ellis Island comes sooner, like they expect now, then it would be done sooner. And that is what we know at the moment about the schedule. And that is my presentation. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Sure.
did you talk about the survey that you're going to do this year?
I did not, but I could.
Could you just give the board a quick update on when you think that's going to happen?
Sure. So yeah, you're talking about the annual monitoring survey.
Correct.
Right. And so we talked about this a bit about whether the annual monitoring survey should come before construction or after construction. I think it would be best. We settled on recommending that happen before construction, so we get a really good picture of the beach changes and the erosion and accretion that happened over this last year, so we can document that. As far as I understand, the surveyor, McKim Creed, has been or will be or has been authorized to do that very soon. We'd like for them to achieve that in June before Great Lakes starts bringing their dredge to Ellis Island down. So that seems achievable. And then we would get that data back hopefully middle of July or so, and then start processing the monitoring survey. So I can't speak for McKim Creed. I mean, it's our understanding that they would be able to get out there before Great Lakes, but maybe that's something that we can confirm with them.
Thank you. Exciting that we might get to do this a little earlier and finish
Great.
a little earlier than thought.
All right. Thank you for your attention.
And then on to the next scheduled.
Yes, right on. Keep right on going. Absolutely.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, sir.
You know, based on the schedule you showed for the permitting,
Mhm.
which goes out to the middle of 2024, what is the earliest the town could put sand on the beach, assuming that's the schedule?
Under the master plan,
Mhm.
the way it's, well, just one way to answer that is if we have that EIS in place and the permits in place, we like to have the permits in place before bidding. So we could have, if necessary, construction documents, plans, specs, contract documents ready to put out to bid immediately after receiving that permit. So the summer, mid to late summer 2024, you could bid the project under that master plan if you needed to. And that would be separate from, for example, if there's a hurricane and you get FEMA funds, that would be a different process, the way we did Post-Orient. So I think the earliest under the master plan would be you could bid late summer, early fall 2024 if that schedule holds and the permits are received on that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
And
Yes.
question about the Bible cores that you showed. You said they were at Town Hall and storage.
Correct.
Are they available for people to look at?
They are, yeah. I don't know where they are. I'll defer to David on that.
We have them stored up by the elevated water tower up at the Public Works facility. So we've got them in storage, and yes, they are available if the public or one of the agencies wants to come ahead and view them.
Can we put one in the lobby at Town Hall?
No, we can.
I've had some questions from some of the public about the fiber core samples that were taken. I just didn't know if they would be available for them. You can go to Town Hall, and look at it, or go somewhere and look at it, and also read the monitoring report.
Sure. I mean, if you don't have any issue, yeah, we could make a sample available. And we do readily have all the monitoring reports available in both hard copy and electronic form.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll pass it on.
Just for availability for looking at the Vibra cores, they do come in plastic sleeves, these metal tubes and plastic sleeves, and a big stack on a pallet. So it would take a little bit of preparation time for somebody to see it. But
I don't think anybody wants to look at all of them. I think
just
a
saying.
representative sample would be
okay, yeah, that's makes sense to me.
just a representative sample in my mind. I wouldn't want them all. No.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, that brings us to items referred to in presentations from the town attorney. Do you only have the closed session, John?
That's correct. I only have items to discuss in closed session.
Okay, all right, then we will come back to that. And then we'll go to items referred to in presentations from the town manager. First, a request for a price increase.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so back in the end of April, we received a request from our subscription recycling service provider, TFC, for an increase to the monthly rate for recycling services to subscribers. As the board is aware, we signed a contract with TFC in the spring of 2021. They started service in May of 2021. We've got about 880 subscribers now. The franchise agreement allowed for them to request a rate increase based on primarily the CPI for garbage and trash. And the agreement outlined what they could request and how. They have asked for a 60-cent per month increase in the subscription rate. And that's primarily based on the March 2022 CPI, which is what they would base it on in the agreement. And so we're bringing this to you today for approval. The total rate per month would be $14.60. As the board is aware, we offer as a town a $5 per month subsidy to each subscriber. And so then the rate for the subscribers would be $9.60, assuming that the town would not increase the subsidy, which we're not proposing. And so we're just asking the board to consider approving the request from TFC. We think it's reasonable. This would allow them to request additional increases in future years should they need them. The total amount they could request over the 3-year period would be 10%. We would suggest that the board approve the increase request and make it effective 90 days from the date of the approval, just to provide the subscribers with sufficient notification for the increase. And that's what we're presenting to you today.
And we'll do plenty of public notification, I assume, through all of our channels.
And we'll ask TFC to notify everyone directly as well.
Okay. All right. I'll just say, as a customer at 2 locations, I don't have any problem absorbing the increased fee. Any questions or comments, concerns from the board? Okay. All right. Then a motion would be in order.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the price increase for recycling. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next is review of town pedestrian projects.
All right. Really quickly, we have been looking at pedestrian projects for a number of years now. This really goes back to 2014 when the town did its first pedestrian plan with a consultant. And we came up with a list of prioritized projects at that time, which we've been working on implementing. In 2017, when we did our comprehensive plan, we took that original list of projects and sort of reprioritized that based on some changing conditions and what we were hearing from the public and the citizens. You know, we've implemented a lot of projects, primarily along 158 from 8th Street up to Hollowell, and then continuing south from Soundside Road all the way to Gull Street. And those represent a significant body of the projects that were in the original plan. And since that time, we've started to work on more smaller side street connections, particularly back into our west side neighborhoods to provide safe access to the new multi-use path. So just this last year, we talked to the board about projects. The board showed interest in doing some more of these smaller projects. David primarily went in and came up with a list of these smaller projects and came up with some cost estimates for those. And we presented those to the board. We've actually acted on a number of those outside of the budget process. During last year's budget, we had done a project on Bonnet Street. We did a project on Barn Street. And we've also done another one in the village at Nags Head. And then now, in advance of some paving work we had scheduled, we did a project in Nags Head Acres. And we're in the process of finishing a project in Old Nags Head Cove to go along with that waterline project. And so what the board recently approved budget amendments for those projects just a month or two ago. And what we were looking at doing was taking sort of the year off this next fiscal year and regrouping on this list of projects, maybe asking the board to form a committee to reprioritize projects and come up with any new projects that our town may wish to do, and then have something ready for next year's budget and CIP that we could present to the board. And so we're asking for the board to consider putting together this committee that would look at not only the list of projects the staff has come up with, but anything else that the committee can point to as need, and then prioritize the list and present it back to the board. And so rather than ask the board today to come up with a list of names for the committee, we'd like to go ahead and put the word out to the community, ask for those that are interested in helping us with this process, and certainly taking any suggestions from the board on who might be good to serve on this, and whether the board wants us to consider certain geographic representation around town. But we would be looking at coming to you in your August meeting with a list of names to consider for the committee, and then going from there. And rather than do a full-blown update to our pedestrian plan, which is very time-consuming and requires applying for grants, we just like to handle this internally with staff and utilizing the citizen committee and board feedback to come up with a new list of projects. And so that's really what we have for you today.
I really like the idea of getting the citizens engaged again at this point in a less formal way and a less protracted way than the full redoing the plan would require. The only thing I would say about citizen representation is that it be all areas of the town. I'm not citing a certain area, but just that we have somebody from all parts of the town. Bob, any?
Yeah, that
questions?
would be my suggestion too. If you could get somebody from each neighborhood that's listed here. So.
Commissioner Brink.
I agree.
Commissioner.
I totally agree, and I would ask that the committee also look at, if we're looking at this map, we're thinking decades out. We're not thinking just a few years, decades, to show on a future map the extension of the pathway further around through the whalebone area onto the causeway, to at least show it on the map that we have some interest in the future to do those areas.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's decades, but
Yes.
it's logistically a problem, but they don't.
But it is part of the town, and it all needs to be connected together. Yep.
I would
Mr.
agree.
Sears? Okay. All right. Very good. I think you have that direction.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you. That brings us to the Board of Commissioners agenda, and Commissioner Cahoon, you have an item.
Well, I do. Thank you. A couple months ago, I read an article about Emerald Isle having a problem with big holes being left on the beach. We all saw the picture of Dave Elder standing in a hole in Kitty Hawk. And most of us know that there was a child killed and a person killed in New Jersey. What I would like to do is ask either the manager or the mayor through the coastal communities that are joined together, both throughout Dare County, but the coast of North Carolina, to take a look at this issue, since it's a coast-wide issue, not just a Nags Head Outer Banks issue. To think about the possibility of looking at local legislation for the coast to give teeth to the enforcement of doing something about the holes.
Okay.
I would ask that our people be more vigilant about, how they interact with the public digging these holes, but I think it needs a statewide effort or coast-wide effort to bring back something perhaps to the legislature to put some teeth in enforcement. Because God forbid we have down here what happened up north in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And we all know what has happened in Dare County in the past.
Yep. Yep.
So that's what I would ask, that if the board would endorse that concept of at least taking it forward to the local communities and the statewide coastal communities.
Yep. Can do. I already have an email list of all the coastal mayors, so can reach out to them.
I mean, I
Quickly.
appreciate it. I think that we need to be proactive, and I would further endorse a public safety campaign, much as we have for the bicycle and pedestrian safety.
Yeah.
Watch for me, look for me. Please don't dig.
Yes.
And ask the Visitors Bureau to perhaps look at some sort of public
Messaging.
activity messaging.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that suggestion, bringing that forward.
Wasn't that what Dave's
They had a
exhibition
public
was?
meeting, yes, they did have a public meeting with, I know, public safety officials and so forth. But I think we need to take it a little bit further and try to reach more people proactively.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Sears, anything to bring forward now? Commissioner Merkley, Commissioner Sanders. That brings us to the mayor's agenda. You remember a couple of months ago, we had a resolution in support of the Wright Brothers Museum and Observatory that's proposed in Kitty Hawk. And at that time, there were a couple of concerns expressed. One was whether there would be operating costs to the public incurred by this development. And the other was, did the Visitors Bureau feel as though their concerns had been adequately addressed? And I know that the Visitors Bureau met on this, and the resolution you have today is drawn from their resolution. I'll ask Commissioner Sears, were you part of that discussion? And
I was. it's a very large hurdle for this to even happen. The Kitty Hawk representative at the Tourism Bureau said that it would be very heavily regulated to be built, and there would be a lot of Kitty Hawk input in that build. But at this point, no one has shown proof of funds. No one has shown that this is going to take place other than asking for support. And the Tourism Bureau wanted to make sure that they did have a welcome center there. And this group in person did say that they would put a new welcome center there for them. And they would be included in that design work of that. And that's how the Tourism Board supported it.
In addition to the resolution, Commissioner Cahoon in particular has expressed reservations about the site development. I realize that's somebody else's town. But I think when we forward this resolution, if we could express our interest in the nature of the site, that be preserved to the maximum extent possible, that if they ever get around to doing this, that they try to do it without sort of tabletopping the whole thing and stripping every tree.
It's a beautiful site.
It is.
I'm not sure what I've been reading is accurate or not, but they were talking about trying to make the site much more visible from the roadscape, which that would involve taking down an awful lot of dunes and trees. And so I don't mind abstaining from this resolution at all.
Right.
Keep in mind a 30,000 square foot building is going to be visible.
It's going to be visible anyway.
At 25 feet in the air.
I'm just saying, looking at what some of the concerns that the committee members were saying what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is going to be plenty visible. So I'll cite, two, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but two provisions. The 1, 2, 3, 4th, whereas this multi-million-dollar project will be fully funded through private investors that want to make the vision a reality, completed and operated at no additional cost to taxpayers. And whereas the project will incorporate a new welcome center at no additional expense to the Dare County Tourist Bureau that will continue to be operated by the Dare County Tourist Bureau, doing business as the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, as a welcome center for Dare County. And so I offer that for your consideration.
I am glad that this board tabled this item last time it came before us to give an opportunity to receive some more information. I'm happy to see that the tourism board has endorsed it, getting a new welcome center, but I share the same concerns as Commissioner Kuhn. I know it's a different town, but that site is really nice. And it's like Commissioner Sears said, you're not going to be able to build a 30,000 square foot museum and not have a.
I don't see it.
Yeah, I agree.
So what are the board's wishes? Is there a motion to approve? I brought it to you at the request of Kitty Hawk, and so I'm not going to I think I've done that job. I think we've given it adequate consideration. If there are still reservations and not a motion to approve, then I'm fine with that. I think we've done our duty.
I think it's something you could probably revisit after there's more
information available about what's
it's like I said, I've seen a presentation on it. It is very in the planning dream phase, I would like to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we will consider this at some future date. Any other business to come before the board?
Mayor, can I just mention one thing that Michelle had asked me to mention? So in the past, the town has sponsored a community shred event for our residents and visitors, whoever wants to attend, to have documents shredded. sensitive documents, tax documents, bank statements, canceled checks, travel documents, anything like that. We're having that here at Town Hall on June 11th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And public is welcome to attend, and just wanted to mention that.
Great service, by the way.
Mm.
And I would also, do you mind?
Yeah.
Thank staff for all the work they put in for the Memorial Day service. I know a lot of us could not attend, but I appreciate all the work the staff did. And I had a lot of compliments from the people that did attend about how well it was conducted. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Then that brings us back to town attorney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I asked that a motion be made that the board enter closed session as allowed by General Statute 143-318.11A3 in order to consult with the town attorney regarding pending litigation matters involving 205 Baltic, Budlong, and other issues.
Someone would make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Board will be in closed session. All right. All right, the board has returned to open session. Mr. Leidy, will you report?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Leidy, anything to report from the closed session?
There's nothing to report other than we did discuss the town's various pending litigation matters and other matters within the attorney-client privilege, but no other actions were taken.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda, and if there's no other business, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Board is adjourned.
Back to bed.
Yes, you're right.